It's time, folks. Welcome to the first ever episode of The Breakdown. I am your host, Sir Scoots. I'll be bringing you my latest rants, my latest news every Wednesday right here where you are right now. I'm going to do a little bit different this very first show because obviously this is our first Do Not Peak Entertainment piece of live content and obviously the first week of the show. So I'm going to take a few minutes to explain what the breakdown is going to be every week, and then what Do Not Peak Entertainment is as well, and then we'll get into the show, and away we go. So first off, even before I do that, I want to give a big shout out to everyone in chat. We've got a lot of new followers, a lot of new subs, a couple gift subs happening, so thank you very much for that. Very, very excited to be here. I have been off air, if you will, for a couple years, other than my own personal stream, so a couple things to note. Really nervous right now, to say the least. This is a little different than being in my bedroom and chatting on Scoots After Dark. It feels more like I'm standing behind a major desk right now. Let me just put it that way. So I'm a little nervous and I'm a little sick. So if I sound a little nasally, if I end up having to cough or sniffle a little bit, kind of working through a cold. So, but the show must go on. We weren't going to cancel this bastard. So what is the breakdown? So I think the easiest way to describe it, I'll start with people that know me and know my past and know some of the shows I've been on. One of the easiest ways to describe the breakdown is live on one, right? Years ago, Marcus Graham, DJ Weed, and Rod Breslou, Slasher, and I did a show called Live on 3. And it was a weekly podcast type show, and it wasn't necessarily talking about all the scores and who won everything. It was more like every week we looked at the topics that interested us, whether we were excited about them or very upset about them, and that's what we talked about every week, right? And so this is going to be very much like that. This is not the place you're going to come to find out who won a Counter-Strike match last night or who won an Overwatch match or anything like that. There's plenty of websites and plenty of shows that kind of sports center their esports and give you those kind of details. This is not that show. We probably ourselves will create some of those kind of shows specifically for games we love, but this is kind of a Scoots Rants, Scoots Cheers kind of show, right? So every week, me and the crew will kind of figure out, what's in my craw and what I want to talk about, right? So that's the breakdown, right? Every Wednesday, going to try to bring it to you like clockwork, and if I'm out of town, we'll try to find a guest host, those kind of things. So what is Do Not Peak Entertainment? Well, Do Not Peak Entertainment is a brand new production company that Jason Baker and I have opened with the lovely blessing and money from GG Group, a company that has been investing in esports for a while. They actually also own the Chaos Esports Club, esports team. So we're kind of a sister company to that. So between Jason and I and GG Group, we came together and we opened Do Not Peak Entertainment. And the idea behind it is, again, Jason's big into production, right? Producer, director from a lot of shows and leagues that you know and love. And I have an experience both in front of the camera and behind the camera, and was thinking about doing something to get out of retirement, right? But I didn't want to do what I used to do, right? What I used to do was host desks or be in control rooms, producing, directing, those kind of things, right? And in my quest to figure out what I wanted to do, because I wanted to unretire, I didn't want to do what I used to do because I don't want to go back on the road. And those jobs, while they're great, don't really have much of a ceiling, right? Once you're a desk host, you're a desk host, and you can get your daily wage as high as you can, but there's nothing to really bite into after a while, right? There's no legacy to there. You're not really building a company, right? And same thing if you're in a control room and you're producing and directing and doing any of those roles. So I certainly could have gone back on the road and done those things, but I wanted to, as I would say, bite back into something. And I also don't want to spend a lot of time on the road. I take care of my elderly mom. She lives with me, turning 90 in March. Much love, Mom. I don't know why I'm looking up. She's still alive. So again, I wanted to find something that allowed me to stay home, right? And Jason and I literally, for the last decade, have been trying to figure out how we can do GotFrag TV again, right? And if you don't know, GotFrag TV was a division of GotFrag, a very old website and media company. And Jason and I opened a TV division where we basically had a small studio, more Counter-Strike heavy than general, gaming and esports content heavy. But the idea was our own studio to make original content, to help other people make content, to do tournament, help and all those kind of things. So he's been wanting to figure out how to do something more serious too. He's been a road warrior. So we were able to finally figure out through happenstance Do Not Peak Entertainment. And again, these are the kind of things I'll tell you now, but once we start doing the show every week, we won't be talking about. So how did it happen? Well, last January, literally a year ago, I get an email from the business development guy at Sneaky Big Studios in Scottsdale, Arizona. State-of-the-art facility here in Arizona. I live in Arizona, right down the street from the studio. And every studio and production company in the mainstream world has been trying to figure out the last couple of years, like, what is this gaming shit? What is this esports shit? Should we get involved? They're all trying to figure out if there's a way for them to make money and make content and get into our crazy new world of esports and gaming, right? Because obviously it's blowing up. So introductory email led to me coming to see this Sneaky Big facility that I really had no idea was even in town. And it is literally a state-of-the-art facility in Scottsdale, Arizona that does animations, commercials, live content, all sorts of stuff, right? So, and again, they were exploring, like, what is this esport thing? What is this gaming thing? What can we do? And you can see we're rolling some of their B-roll. Again, they do commercials. They do all sorts of stuff, right? And so out of that conversation started a very organic kind of discussion about, well, maybe I can come consult with you. Maybe I can help you figure out this landscape for you and figure out what kind of business you can get out of esports and gaming. Quickly progressed to talking to Jason. Jason happened to be consulting with the parent company of GG Group, which is the Pummel Investment Group, PMML. And Jason was working for them because they were wanting to open an esports studio somewhere, right? Because they own, the overarching company owns Rivalry, and then obviously below GG Group, they own Chaos. So, and they were thinking about an esports studio, more like we would think about, right? Certainly not anything as big and grand as Sneaky Big. So when he told me that, I'm like, well, bro, like right down the street from me, I just saw this place. Maybe there's a way that you all don't need to build a studio, because they didn't really care where it was. The team, Chaos, is based in Atlanta. The investors are based in Toronto, but Rivalry also sponsors a lot of Richard Lewis's content. He's in LA. So Jason's job was to kind of figure out maybe where we put the studio and then what do we buy, right? So as soon as we put everyone together, we realized, like, wait a minute, this studio is great. And so we kind of stole the idea from like GG Group opening their own studio, formed a new company, Jason, myself, and the GG Group, to open Do Not Peak Entertainment, right? And we're embedded inside Sneaky Big Studio. So the easiest way to kind of think about that is, if you think about the movie system, right? All the sound stages in LA, all the different lots, right? Paramount, Universal, whatever. They will then embed production companies in their production studio. And those companies are the ones that make the movies, right? You give them office space, and then they get access to your sound stages and everything, and they're under contract to make X amount of movies. So that's kind of what this is. We are embedded in their facility. We have our own office space, and we absolutely, are taking advantage of all their toys. Now, the beautiful warehouse you see is not Sneaky Big. This building is right next door to them. It used to be an old TV warehouse, so we took it over. It's kind of our home. As you can see, we grabbed a bunch of TVs. We made my desk. And again, so that's kind of how we got here with Do Not Peak and the breakdown, specifically this show. And then the kind of things we're going to do more of these kind of shows. We absolutely want to have a nice weekly set of shows, right? So think kind of a TV station with original programming, right? The breakdown is just the first of these shows, right? And then we also are going to expand into the facility and add some team boot camp rooms, some really nice facilities for teams to come train so that they can then use the facilities to do other stuff, right? To make their own commercials, do all those kind of things. And then on top of that, we want to look at tournament organizers, see how we can help them. And at the end game, a couple of years from now, we want to see if we can bring some tier 1 esports events into our arenas, into our theaters here in Phoenix and in the Arizona area, because we don't get a lot of big stuff here. But we're a huge city, 5th largest city in the country, tons of facilities, right? So that kind of brings you up to speed. But it's a beautiful place. We've got, obviously, this is our home. It's our warehouse. You'll see bits and pieces of it all show. Right up in the corner is my main man. We got our own control room. Alchemist is up there, Jason Baker and crew. And again, hey, buddy, how are you, man? There he is.
Doing good. You were muted the whole time, so we're gonna have to do the whole intro again.
Okay, hang on. Let me re-rack. Okay. And 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome to you bastards. So, and Jason will be joining the show on a regular basis. And again, like as a personal note, like Jason is my best mate. We've been through many esports wars together and companies that closed and all sorts of stuff. So to be able to open a business with this bro of mine and know that he's in my ear and he's handling production while I'm on air. I won't be on air at all our shows, just this one. I'm a pig made in heaven in that sense, right? So again, that's kind of brings you up to speed with what the hell we're doing out here in Arizona, right? And we're going to be hiring more people. We're going to be expanding. Sneaky Big is looking at expanding. So it's going to be a great ride for us. So let's get into the actual show, though, right? So one thing to keep in mind, I will always try to answer some questions at the end of the show, right? So what you want to do in chat, if you have a question, whether it's topical to the actual things I talk about today or maybe a general question, I'll do my best to try to answer it. What you want to do if you have a question is make sure you use DN Peek in chat so it highlights for our guys, and they'll start grabbing questions and they'll put them in a doc. And at the end of the show, I will look at some of those questions and answer some. Don't know if I'll answer all of them, so try to stay away from the trolley questions and that kind of stuff. But we'll try to make that a normal part of every week as well. And then one thing I'm going to tease all show long, this is what Marcus would call and what news agencies call the water skiing squirrel, right? Stand by, the water skiing squirrel will be coming to you soon. What that basically means is you tease a news piece till the very goddamn end of your show so everybody stays and watches, right? So we've been doing some top 5, Counter-Strike clips from different events. We started a Dota top 5. And so when we wanted to do a top 5 CS players of 2019, right? And so we started thinking about it, and I said there's no one better to ask for his input and maybe make his top 5 than Duncan Shields, Thorin, right? So you will see the world premiere of Duncan's top 5 CS players of 2019 today, right? And then it'll be up on our YouTube for you to watch later. But that's one of those, stay tuned for Duncan's top 5. Be at the end of the show, right? So, really excited. Turned out well. Duncan was great. So it was awesome. Thank you, Duncan, if you're watching, for participating with that. Let's get into it. Let me throw this. I have never thrown this on camera. Let's see what this does. Not bad. All right. Now we're going to get into it. So our first topic I'm going to talk about is Counter-Strike, right? Obviously, Jason and I are hardcore Counter-Strike guys. We have Anthony on staff, who you might know from some of the echoes of movies over the last couple years. Video editor, graphic designer, movie maker. So we're kind of the Counter-Strike crew. And we've got Daniel, one of our core crews, is more of the Dota guy. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about Counter-Strike probably almost every week. But again, not talking to you about like who won yesterday and what, that kind of stuff. You want to go to Half-Life TV. You want to go to other websites for that kind of stuff. And speaking of Half-Life TV, tonight, they'll be doing their Half-Life Confirmed podcast, which is a couple of Half-Life TV guys, Sponge. And tonight they have Chet, I'm a Pet, the coach of EG on. They're going to be discussing all kind of the minutia of Counter-Strike. So make sure you check out their show tonight. So let's start with 2019 for Counter-Strike, right? Banner year for our game, right? I say our. You might not be a Counter-Strike fan. Tough shit, you should be. Not only did we celebrate 20 years, right? Counter-Strike came out in 1999, for God's sake. Still going strong. But we had a banner year, right? I remember reading that December of last year, we hit our highest concurrent player count players of the game in December, right? So our game is growing still, right? We're not stagnating, and we're certainly not losing players, right? And for an esport to really kind of hold its own and be successful for long term, you do need players, right? Like they are your regulars of your restaurant, right? You need to start with a good player base of your game to ever hope to have a lot of people watching, right? And Counter-Strike's an old enough game that we get a lot of fans in Counter-Strike that maybe played 1.6, maybe played a source version, maybe played a couple years ago, aren't good enough, don't like playing it anymore, it's too stressful, but they still watch Counter-Strike, right? So really awesome stuff. And again, also 2019, we saw an epic rivalry kind of, right? Liquid kicking ass for a while. Astralis losing their shine. Liquid kicking ass for a while, winning Grand Slam faster than everybody, $1 million in their pocket. And then Astralis said, yeah, we're not quite done yet. Came back, got number 1 back, rolled through, kept winning events. So, and then Liquid kind of fell off, right? So really good year setting us into 2020, to say the least, for my favorite game, Counter-Strike. Now, the outlook for 2020, and I've tweeted this, a lot of people have talked about it on podcasts, things are getting shook up. It's going to be crazy. We have this kind of mantra in esports that tournament organizers don't make money, team owners don't make money, and the only people that really make money are the actual guys playing the games, right? The actual players, right? Because they get nice salaries, they don't have the huge investment costs to have ROI against. So, 2020 for Counter-Strike is kind of a year of I think, breaking some of our old systems and figuring out new ones, right? It is going to be a transition year. And, we've obviously got ESL Pro League. They've announced big changes with the Pro League and their Pro Tour. And then, you've got these rumors of B-Site coming and doing their own league. Team owners kind of owning a league and controlling and kind of building something up, kind of a revamped version of PEA, but in a much better way, I would say. And then you've got Blast, who obviously has revamped their product. They're going to do a whole bunch of new stuff in 2020. And then you've got all the same other players, right? We're not losing Starladder and Epicenter and DreamHack and all that kind of stuff. But it's going to be, I would say, kind of a year of transition, right? You now have, a player association that is actively involved in negotiations and conversations with everybody I just mentioned and trying to do their part and put the player's voice very forward in all these conversations, just like professional sports, right? And it's happening, it's working, agreements are being worked on, collective bargaining agreements, if you're familiar with professional sports and how PAs work. Those things are all happening, right? And that's a really good thing for the sport, or the e-sport, because it professionalizes the player's voice and organizes their thoughts and processes and protects them in a lot of ways. And same thing, the team owners and the tournament organizers and even Valve now have kind of a one place to come to get a kind of a player vibe and a player opinion on stuff, right? All the TOs have been reaching out to the PA about when should we bring this map into tournament play and all those kind of things. So that's only going to get more symbiotic, right? The player association is, I think, and I'm an advisor to it. Full disclosure, I do advise the player association. I don't run it. I don't work it day to day. There is a crew that's doing that. Michael, Mads, Jacob, all those guys. And again, it's kind of finally coming into its own, which is, for me, one of the guys that helped push it and get it going. It's just music to my ears, right? Now, with that, what I do have to caveat is there's lots of rumors out there. There's lots of reports out there. I would suggest you go read DK's news articles on some of these things I talked about. The new leagues are coming and how things are changing. I have to be really careful right now because I'm under NDAs on all these things, right? I would love to just start spewing to you guys what's coming and who's doing what and how this means this and how it reacts to that. I can't, right? Until things are public, I have to be pretty careful about what I say because I don't want to get the PA in trouble, right? But it's good shit, right? We're going to break some eggs, but we're going to make a hell of a fucking cake, right? So big changes, like I said, right? But again, DK is your man right now. He seems to be on the warpath of getting some of these details for you. So make sure you check his stuff out, right? Now, another thing that happened last year, and excuse me, I do have a cold, so I'm going to cough every so often, is the PA started some in earnest conversations with Valve, right? Notoriously, the major process has been a little cumbersome and late. And what I mean by that is by the time a TO was picked to run the major, player breaks had already been set and all these things had already been in place. So then you get a major that comes kind of more last minute into the calendar, and it ends up right after a player break or in some regards right in it. And that just makes for bad major Counter-Strike, right? You've got players and teams that would take their vacation because Counter-Strike's a lot of travel, right? We all know that. These guys are on the road all the time. And they're starting to get better about picking and choosing what events they go to for their own mental sanity as well as like practicing and getting ready for the next events. But no one's going to not prepare for a major, right? So when you've got a nice player break and then a major, a team has to make a decision. Do we cut our player break really short? Do we not take the player break at all? And then we've got a slight advantage because we stayed home and practiced, but then we miss a vacation, which we really need to recharge our batteries because we got a long calendar, right? So it just created shitty Counter-Strike in some regards, right? Some teams weren't prepared as well as they would. So thankfully, Valve and the PA sat down and we figured out, they basically said to the PA, like, look, just tell us they gave some caveats of what dates were bad for them. They said, of these other areas, you tell us when we should have the majors, right? So we looked at the player breaks, summer and winter, and now all fixed, right? Our fall, so we've got a summer player break, but then we don't have a major till, into the fall. And then our next player break, and our first major this year, is in May, so plenty of time after the holiday break. So these teams roll in not burned out, per se, but ready to rock and roll, right? They'll be at more of a peak level for all these teams, and they don't have to sacrifice their vacations, And I don't want to sit here and go like, the players need a vacation. Keep in mind, we call it the player break, but that's a break for the coaches. That's the break for anybody involved in anything to do with Counter-Strike, right? Tournament organizers, social media people, content people that travel with teams. It's a break for our ecosystem in a way, right? So really, really cool stuff. Yep, so really cool stuff that we're working with Valve, fixing these things, right? Takes time, right? So speaking of major, we can also talk about that. We know where our next major is, right? And we're going to Brazil, right? Brazil is legendary Counter-Strike territory, right? You might know MIBR from now, but that is a historic brand, right? There are historic players that come out of Brazil from 1.6 days, right? Incredibly passionate fan base for all things sports and all things esports. So really awesome. ESL's got it. It's going to be in Rio in May, right? So again, back to those dates. Really, really cool stuff. Now, again, Scott has to put his rant cap on. I've spent time in Rio. I did the World Cup in Rio. It's not a secret that logistics and things like that in Brazil are a little more challenging. But the cool thing about it is that ESL has done some Brazilian events. So they're not going to have any sort of sticker shock with how you get things done in Brazil, right? So really, really exciting. I know a lot of people, when it got announced, said wrong city, should be Sao Paulo, shouldn't be Rio. Yeah, probably so. But it's also what venue they could get, size they wanted, dates available. Probably all sorts of things led to them choosing Rio and not Sao Paulo. It is what it is. But really, really awesome stuff, I think, that ESL's got it. And we're going to Brazil for the first time. So cool stuff, right? Now, next topic I want to talk about is the issue of rebranding, right? Let's chat a little bit about rebranding, right? Now, we got North here on my TV, but before I even get to that, we've had a couple rebrands, right, in 2019. NRG did a full rebrand, and it was kind of like, what is this? Now it looks like some sort of 80s weird logo, right? Is what it is. I often, I have this philosophy, like, if it ain't broke, why are you trying to fix it, right? Is the problem with your org, your logo, and your branding, or they're saying, and I'm not saying anything wrong with NRG, but I'm just saying what causes these kind of rebrands, right? So NRG rebranded, and then on the positive, Evil Geniuses has returned to Counter-Strike, so that is awesome. Used to be one of the owners of EG, so still bleed blue a little bit, although now it's a darker blue, maybe a black. So it's great to see them back. Speaking of NRG, it's the old NRG roster. So I love seeing the team back in Counter-Strike, no doubt about that. But then they did a rebrand, right? And I was like, what? And again, bias, right? But I think in some regards, EG's logo and wording logo were some of the most iconic shit around, right? Now maybe redo it a little bit, redo the circle shield and tweak it. But it just, I don't know, it's just like, why? What was wrong with it? Now, what we were told afterwards, obviously outrage on all these rebrands, but EG came out and said, hey, the crest, the circle did not go away. It is also part of the rebrand. We just don't have it done yet, right? Alex Garfield came out, put a series of tweets out. He was very disappointed in the rebrand and also kind of the path of Evil Geniuses after he departed, bigger than just the rebrand. But so they did come out and say, hey, it's coming, man. We didn't throw the Circle brand away. We just didn't get to it. So then I start thinking, well, why not wait? Why, if you're going to rebrand, do it, throw it all out there, because I think if people would have saw a better, cool Circle EG and the new scripting, Evil over Geniuses, then probably a huge chunk of the controversy and the outrage goes away, right? Because that's what a lot of people are saying. Yeah, the big V is kind of neat, and people, I don't think we're bitching so much about that in isolation, but it's like, where is the actual logo? What did you do to the EG logo? So hopefully it does come back. Hopefully it looks good and kind of nods to the history of it, maybe revamp it, 3D it or whatever. But it just kind of, it's just like, why are you all rebranding? You've built these things up, you're all getting investment, and now you're rebranding. It's like, what are you doing? Now let's get to this one, right? EG's old, right? NRG is not as old, but older. These guys are 3 years old, right? Why is North rebranding is what we all asked, right? Like, what are you doing? You're only 3 years old. Why are you rebranding? And it made no sense to all of us, right?
I'm a lion.
They got a cool lion thing. Their scripting was fine. It's like, so we were all, and again, we're not all expert marketing officers, but it was just like, what are you doing? This is good. So yeah, so now when you see it, like the lion's all kind of screwed up. He's a little buck-toothy. This is a tweet, right? Obviously, North, and it's just I don't get it, right? So I tweeted. I said, a lot of us tweeted, right? Yeah, the memes that are coming out of this are glorious because there's two parts of this. First, there's the rebrand itself, right? They rebranded, right? But the way in which they decided to publicly do the rebrand was they went and deleted every piece of content on the internet that they had control over, right? Cleaned all their Twitter up, cleaned all their Instagram up, cleaned everything up, right? Took all their old content, tossed it in the bin, right? And then, so we had a whole day of speculating, were they going out of business? Was it a rebrand? What the hell is going on? Why is everything gone, right? That part makes zero sense to me, right? Rebrand, whatever. It's a whole new management team, same owners, new management team. So, they want to put their stamp on it. Kind of similar to the EG thing. I think they want to put their stamp on it, so be it. But why did you delete every piece of history that you created on the internet, right? And I asked this, I tweeted this the other day to the world, not necessarily in particular, here we go. And then I got an answer actually this morning, right? Having my morning coffee, and Alexander here was kind enough to actually answer my question, right? So what he said is, I guess I understand why you're wondering. When I look at, yeah, so I didn't get a chance to read that. Hopefully you all did. But basically, if you read this, I don't know if you guys, yeah. So this reads to me like absolute marketing jizz, right? I guess I understand why you're wondering. When I look at the numbers of visits to our old inventory, we are well below 0.3% revisits. The wipe is a way of creating a clean slate and ushering in a transformation, and the loss of followers for this kind of stunt is below 1.0%. He then goes on to say, even more good marketing speak, right? The value we get in reach and mentions is huge for an organization like ours. Yeah, tell me more about how an esports team operates, Alexander. Appreciate that. More importantly, we have a plan for the long run, and it will be implemented on a continuous basis with a solid brand story. But thanks for a solid question. I asked two questions. He answered one, and later he answered the other one because I thought maybe the investment changed, right? They're owned by FC Copenhagen, and maybe they had to do something different with the Lion. They had to do some stuff, but they didn't even change it that much. So investors are the same. Football team's still there. So that isn't the reason, right? Now, again, I don't care. It's not about followers, and it's not about even, it's about if I Google right now and try to find information about your company and your team, I'll find nothing. That's what it's about. So it doesn't make any sense to me, right? And this is the ranty part of the show, right? I just don't get it. Now, I'm not a chief marketing officer, right? I'm not in charge of these kind of big things, but it just seems like you threw away what little history you created. Now, on this point, Richard Lewis wrote an article, I think it came out yesterday, maybe the day before. It's out on Dexerto, and it's kind of his take on the rebrands, right? He does talk about the two I just talked about, and he also talks about this one, right? Now, Richard kind of pontificates on, it's not this marketing stuff, we want a clean slate for this reason. Richard's thought process is they cleaned their history because they haven't done well competitively, right? And they've got some cringy tweets. They've got some back and forth and some, not good results, and a lot of their own fan base, like, kind of giving them grief, right, with hashtags and different stuff. So, so Richard's kind of like, well, maybe they erase their future or their past because it's just not a pretty past, right? I think you got to keep it up, man. I think you have to, your history is your history, right? But so be it. I don't run North. I don't run a team anymore. But it just kind of stuck in my craw, like, why are y'all doing this, right? And then very last minute, yesterday, don't have any graphics for it, but yesterday, the LA Valiant Overwatch League team changed their colors. A couple of the Overwatch teams are changing their fucking colors. Miami changed their colors, right? Thank you, Jason. What? You're only a couple years old. What are you doing? And then, so you look at their, like, social media, and it's like, thanks, I just bought a green shirt. Thanks, I just bought your old merch. Thanks, now my shit's worthless. Or maybe it's a collector's item. Like, did you fuck up 2 years ago when you were doing your colors or something? Like, I don't know, man. It's just, this is the kind of shit that I just scratch my head and go, what the fuck are you doing? Anyway, and again, if your colors were bad before, then you paid $25, $30 million for a franchise spot and you couldn't figure out your fucking colors, right? So it just seems really weird for me. So that leads to my next topic, Overwatch League and the CDL League, right? So big year for these guys, right? Super big year for these guys. They're finally, so we'll do a little bit of Overwatch first while this graphic's up. So obviously Overwatch has spent their first 2 years in LA doing seasons out of one studio, teams all based in LA, nice, consistent production. Alchemist did season 1 of ran all the observers.
No idea what you're talking about.
So Jason's like, I never did that. I'm talking about your ex-wife. Not that ex-wife, though, the other one. So their business model is now moving home, right? The business model always was that these cities become true homes, all the teams move home, and they play matches at home, right? Again, like a traditional North American or even, Premier Leagues, those kind of things, traditional team sports where you go play at everybody's place, right? And that's always been their plan, right? So now they're going to start doing that. This next season, they will have homestands where a bunch of teams go to one place. They all play each other. So it's not just like Boston plays Philly and that's it for the night. It'll be a bunch of matches, kind of little tournaments at each of these homestands. We've seen a few homestands last year where they're kind of just testing the waters and figuring things out. But now they're all moving home. LA has been closed. They will do their broadcast, like analyst desk, if you will, from LA. But the commentators, play-by-play color, and each venue will kind of run the show, which opens up its own set of challenges, right? Multiple production companies involved, not all under one roof in LA, not all run by Blizzard per se. Teams are involved in production now. So it's going to be very interesting what the production level is like at these various stops, right? And there's even some days, I think, on the schedule where they have 2 homestands going in different time zones. So as a viewer, you'll go from one homestand time zone to the other, right? All in kind of one day. See how it turns out, And then also on top of that, Call of Duty's official franchise league starts, right? And they start with this model, although they'll be doing more tournaments at each event and not so much kind of just the homestand stuff. But the idea is they're all moving home. And we'll now see at least the beginning of how this business plan works out. The idea of localized regional teams living at home, advertising at home, much like traditional sports, right? And I think a lot of people think that I'm a hater, Richard's a hater, Duncan's a hater, if you dare criticize the Overwatch League, you're a fucking hater, right? I, from day one, have had the exact same feeling about this thing. I'm cautiously optimistic, right? And because it does work in sports, right? And it can be an absolutely cool way to do esports in a city. It doesn't mean that every esport needs to be localized and every game has to fall into this business model, just like not every game has to fall into the Counter-Strike business model, right? And then you look at what Riot is doing with their League of Legends leagues, similar, franchised, locked down, but not regional, right? So there's lots of ways to skin the esports cat, if you will, and nobody really knows which way is the best way to monetize for their game yet. Still very much in experimental mode. Totally cool with that, right? Never had a problem with someone going, yeah, let's make something city-based, right? The problem is you charge $25 million plus for the experiment, right? That's what scares me. That's what I've always said. The idea might be awesome, might work out great for everybody, but that's a really expensive ticket price to see if the movie's worth a shit, right? If you're an investor, right? Great new investors coming in the space, right? You got big sports teams buying in, Kraft Group, Kroenke, all these guys funneling into this first, right? This is their first foray into esports, right? They've been sold that this bad boy is going to be the next NFL, right? Yeah, ain't going to happen, right? And maybe one day the actual sales documents, the PDFs that were used to sell these leagues to these investors will become public, and we can all laugh together, right? And I want it to work out. I'm not a fan of these games in the sense of an esports guy. I don't watch them that often, other than for production value. But the fear, the big fear, and it's the fear anytime big money comes in, is that if it fails, if it crashes in a couple years, because we won't really know for a while, they're all going to go home, and these first homestands will probably be really well attended, right? Because they're new, right? What we really find out is in a couple years, if people still care, when the shine of a brand new team in your city is over, will you still go watch Overwatch or Call of Duty, right? So where I get really, really nervous is history has a fucking, loves to repeat itself, as they say, right? And what I'm afraid is going to happen, and this is what I tweeted and then got destroyed on the subreddit of, well, maybe not destroyed. I think a lot of people agree with me. But my fear is that investors get burned, sponsors get burned, and they are new to our scene in the sense that they're not endemic. They haven't been through the ropes. They haven't figured out that esports is actually a shitload of games that are very, very different, right? Counter-Strike is so different than StarCraft, so different than Rocket League, so different than Rainbow Six and League. You know what I mean? Like, they're very different. The ecosystems are different. The productions, everything is different, right? But if you're an outsider and you have invested in esports, if this fails, you're going to potentially get gun shy. You're not going to think that Overwatch or even Call of Duty was a bad investment. You're going to think that esports was a bad investment. And you're going to get gun shy. You might delay coming back, or you might never come back. And while I might not love these games and I don't watch them all the time, I don't want any investor, I don't want any sponsor, I don't want anyone to get burned in our scene. Because again, maybe they're smart enough to go, oh shit, okay, well, Overwatch, bad, but man, no, this esports thing is actually for real, so let's look around. And there will be some investors that get it and that have been properly educated, but I guarantee it'll scare people away. And Scoots, what are you talking about? That never happens. Like, come on, they're smart enough. They understand the difference. CGS scared Mountain Dew away from esports for years. CGS was a North American franchise league. They had team names that were based on cities, but their plan was never to move home. It was all done in LA. But that scared sponsors away from esports for years, right? An even bigger one, I'll tell the story of WSVG, CXG, Intel, and AMD and CPL, right? So years ago, Intel was a huge sponsor of CPL, right? They were their title sponsor, basically, gave them the most money, right? When CPL was up and running, and CPL was a big deal for all of us, right? And Scott Valencia leaves his job at CPL, and he takes Intel with him to WSVG, an up-and-coming world video, what was it? Worlds, I don't even remember what it stood for. Anyway, shout outs to Slasher if you're watching, because Slasher was it Guitar Hero 2? I don't remember, but he was a judge for the Guitar Hero competition, if I recall, or something like that. But anyway, point being, Intel leaves the CPL family, right, and goes to WSVG. And then we'll come back to WSVG, right? AMD, Intel's competition, not really into esports that much, jumps right in that year, right? They're like, we'll take that spot. So they become a CPL sponsor, right? They also that year sponsor CXG, CyberX Games, right? Big deal. Going to be tournaments all around the world. all this crazy shit, millions in prize money, starting out with the first event in Las Vegas, right? I attended that event, as in maybe some in chat even attended that event, right? AMD, title sponsor. I know for a fact $250,000 plus for that sponsorship. This is a weekend tournament, and this is a decade plus ago, right? Well, CXG literally is the definition of a dumpster fire, right? On site, the event goes to shit, right? Games don't get played, tournament gets canceled. It has a big BYOC element as well, so then BYOCs bring your own computer. So no one shows up for that. The people that do show up for that, they don't have kind of good crowd control on gear and stuff. People start getting stuff stolen out of the tent. It's literally a train wreck of an event, right? Run by the Hill family, Chris Hill and his dad, and just an absolute clusterfuck, right? AMD got burned, right? They had paid, they had a big booth in the tent, shitty attendance, event literally goes to crap. I mean, thank God that we don't have the social media like we have now, right? You had to go to forums and read about stuff and read about on the websites and stuff, because it would have been an interesting timeline that weekend. That scared them away for years. AMD was scared for years because what happens, it's not some big nebulous company, it's a marketing department, right? And it's a chief marketing officer and a couple guys that decide, we're going to invest our budget here, we're going to invest our budget here. Well, if those things turn into train wrecks, that guy or gal can lose their job for one, let alone their bosses go, yeah, Johnny Bravo tried to sell us on this esports shit and it went to fucking hell in a handbasket. And again, they were also sponsoring CPL. CPL went to hell in a handbasket those last couple of years, right? So my fear is based in reality, and I'll bring one more example up into this world. WSVG also turns into a train wreck, right? And so World Series of Video Games, thank you, Jason. World Series of Video Games, right? It turns into a train wreck. It falls apart. It gets canceled. They not only burn Intel, which thankfully Intel really never went away. They obviously huge sponsor of the ESL stuff, Intel Extreme Masters, thank God. But little do many people remember, CBS Sports signed a contract with WSVG to broadcast and be part of this thing. Have you seen any CBS Sports esports lately? Right? Scared those guys away, right? And obviously there's probably other things than just getting burned, right? But so the fear is that the outside mainstream investors, the people that only know one esport and think it's all esports, if they get burned, they will be very gun shy or they will never return, right? And that's a legitimate concern that a lot of us have, you know? It's not that Overwatch is a bad game and the meta's terrible and they don't patch it enough and they need more heroes. Like, those are all concerns for sure. And the player base isn't growing. But, like, I'm fearful that if it crashes and burns, because again, if you think about Blizzard's investment and all the team investment, we're getting to $1 billion investment in these leagues, right? That's just scary stuff for guys like me, right? Because we know esports is growing, we know the viewership is growing, we know we're being accepted as kind of an entertainment form, but an outside guy who loses 20 million might be like, let's go somewhere else, right? And I know that the nature of venture capitalists, and not all the investors are venture capitalists in the Overwatch League, but the nature of that is you invest in 10 things, and maybe 2 or 3 hit, or and a couple don't, right? So yeah, you could certainly say, yeah, they're used to it. They invest here and they invest here, and if this doesn't work out, so be it. They'll be okay. They will be okay, but they'll still think esports is a bad investment, right? And so they'll stay away from our sector, and nobody wants that, right? So that's my rant on that kind of topic. So now let's talk about kind of the talent issues, right? Big changes, and before we get to that specifically, obviously we got some casters up here. Let's talk about the Blizzard changes and the Overwatch League changes before we get to the most recent stuff of casters no longer working there. Blizzard lost Morheim, lost Metzen, right? They lost a bunch of big, important soul of Blizzard type people the last couple years, right? And they're gone, right? It's Activision Blizzard now, right? Those guys are all gone, right? And that, you can feel the effects in the games, in the PR, even last BlizzCon. It's a very different company than it was just a few years ago, right? They've lost their soul is what everyone says, right? It's unfortunate, right? Now, when we get back to Overwatch League, Nate Nanzer went to fucking Epic, right? Now, someone will say, well, they just dangled a bunch of money at him, and so he took it. Well, first off, I'm sure Nate was pretty well paid at Blizzard. And if you don't know, this is all his idea. He pitched it, he thought of it, he went and got investors for it. Like, if anyone was waving the Overwatch flag of making a league, making it localized, it was Nate Nanzer. His vision, his idea. So he left. And he left before the vision actually really activates, right? Going home and being in their home cities. Now, you can sit there and just say, yeah, he got bought off, right? He moved for money. Yeah, I'm thinking it's way deeper than that, right? And I could be wrong. I don't know Nate. I haven't talked to Nate about it. But I think money might have been a factor. But I quite imagine that frustration levels, budget cuts, all these other things, his vision not being able to actually be realized is probably also weighs into it. If he was a happy camper at Blizzard and he loved what Overwatch League was becoming, and it was my idea, right? Wouldn't you stay? Because like he wasn't getting shit wages, right? So they all leave, right? All gone, right? Now let's get to the guys behind me, talent. So we've had some talent announcements, right? Officially, and again, keep in mind, often people like me know a whole lot more than we can talk about, right? Let's just leave it at that. So officially, you got Puckett leaving, who was the main desk host. A few people rotated in and stuff. Now, Chris says he's moving back to New York is kind of the main reason he's leaving. His wife's got a job there. He wants to support his wife. That's where he was from. That's where he lives. He moved out to LA in the first place because he was a MLG and / Activision Blizzard employee, years ago when he moved out. So it kind of makes sense that if he doesn't want to live out there and his wife has a better, cool job and he wants to freelance a little bit, then it does make sense that he moves back home to the New York side, right? Obviously, he's great friends with, all of the Andbox guys, the XMLG guys, right? They're all there in the city. Sundance, excuse me, Sepso, all those characters, right? And Adam and that whole gang has started up Esports Engine, which is a traveling production and logistics company. So I imagine he's going to do a lot of shit with his friends, right? So that one maybe not so controversial, right? But let's get to Monty, right? And I know Monty's an acquired taste, like all of us that speak our mind. I'm an acquired taste, right? Not everyone is a Monty fan. I love Monty. Monty don't fuck around with his opinions, right? And so he's a man after my own heart. So even Monty right here, the departure of Nate Nanzer. I won't read these all to you. You can see it. But so for Monty, it wasn't that he wasn't maybe getting the right paycheck offered to him. It was more about creative differences and Nate Nanzer leaving. Now, keep in mind, this is Nate's project. Nate hired Monty, right? Also, what the competitive Overwatch subreddit seems to often forget, Monty was not hired to just be an on-air piece of talent. He's a consultant to the whole goddamn project, right? And so, he's not allowed to consult. They want him to shut up and just be on air. That ain't Monty's gig. He wanted to be part of it. So he's not like, I'm talent, you need to listen to me. He's more like, you hired me to consult you. Listen to me, right? Very different, right? So totally understand why if Nate's leaving and the whole shift of that kind of world is changing on him, that he would decide, you know what, I'm out. You hired me to consult and talk. You only want me to talk. I'm moving on, right? I think the competitive Overwatch subreddit and maybe the hardcore fans, again, he's an acquired taste, so some are like, we won't miss anything. We'll be fine without him. You're fucking idiots, man. Not having Monty in your ear to talk to you about stuff esports related. He's one of the smartest fucking people I know in esports, let alone I know, period. Right? So be it, And it might be the same outspokenness that kind of got Alchemist in a little bit of trouble, because again, you hire Alchemist to tell you how to do shit, and he tells you how to do shit, and
I don't
you
know what you're
ignore
talking
it,
about.
and you do the opposite of it. You're going to have issues, right? We're not yes men. We're not here to fucking tell you all your terrible ideas are good ideas. So Monty probably had a frustration level with that, right? If you're not going to listen to me, I don't even care how much you pay me. Because he said in several interviews, for him, not about compensation, more about, not having a say, that he was hired to have a say in. And his boy Nate's gone. So makes perfect sense. And then Doha recently, they were casting partners, him and Doha. Doha has decided to not accept the contract offered to him and also go back into the land of freelancer. Freelancer, by the way. So it's just a lot of shakeups, right? And this goes back to, and I'll just say they're not done. Like, there's more shakeups coming. And we haven't even talked about what Call of Duty talent will or won't be coming back that you know and love from the MLG Tour days, right? It seems to me, on the outside looking in, that they are budget cutting. They are doing the exact opposite they should be doing when they're moving home to these cities. You should be wrapping your arms around every single person that helped you build this league so far. Not lowballing them, not, we don't need you anymore. Like, you need these people more than ever. They've drank your Kool-Aid since before you fucking went on air, right? And now you don't think you need them? Yeah, we'll see. And no offense to the guys that are sticking around and gals, right? If, we haven't heard who is definitely staying around. I think Zoe is a full-time, she works for Blizzard, so I imagine we will get an announcement that she's sticking around. Sideshow and Brand have announced that they are moving from the desk to actually be a casting pair and travel the world and do the events. Great for them. That's awesome, right? And they're fan favorites. They're funny. They're wacky. They have a good rapport and all that. So nothing wrong with who's staying. That's not a problem, right? But you're losing your marquee big names, right? And yes, you might not think they're big names, but they're big names, right? So and again, I don't think we're done with that, right? And it just seems to me like now is not when you nickel and dime. Now is not when you do this. Maybe you do it next year, but because this year, as we talked about earlier, really important year, right? So, and again, what I've heard through the grapevine is that, the numbers are low and now there's travel. So it's like, wait, you're going to pay me less than you paid me for roughly the same amount of work while I could sleep every night at home in LA, go to the same studio every day. Now you want me to travel the world, shitty hotels, shitty food, different production, different people in my ear every couple weeks, and you're going to pay me less. Or even you're going to pay me the same. Why would I do that unless I was an up-and-coming talent that didn't have a whole lot of other options, right? And no offense to those that are sticking around. But it just, now is not the time to budget cut, right, at all. Whether it's behind the scenes. They might be budget cutting behind the scenes and the production people too, and that's just going to be bad. Now is when you spend too much money, right? Look what they spent in LA at that studio and the production value there. And now it's just, I will use the word asinine when I talk about this. It just seems kind of asinine to me, right? So again, afraid of the ripple effects. If it all goes south, then we're not going to know on any of these for several years, right? The plug's not going to magically get pulled, this year. We've got some runway to see these experiments play through, right? Which is great, right? And again, knock on wood, I hope it works out, right? I don't have to be a fan of a game and watch the game to hope that the esport of the game doesn't fail, right? Because again, rising tide, right? Raises all ships, as they say. So we obviously want these to succeed in their own ways, right? So that's Overwatch CDL. Whoop! Now we're going to take a quick commercial break. And we come back, I got more topics to talk about. We are not done. And again, don't forget, we've got Thorin's top 5 Counter-Strike players of 2019 coming your way as well, after the break. All right, welcome back. Second half of the breakdown for January 8th, 2020. I'm still your host, Sir Scoots. Still here, got a little bit more to rant about today. Although, the rest of my topics, one good, one bad. All right, so we'll just tease you with that. So hang on just a second. I get a little cough in my throat. Like I said, I'm a little sick today, so. Oh, look at this branded logo cup. Wouldn't you like one of these tasty Do Not Peek cups? Maybe one day you'll have one. Someone asked me in chat if I had my bat. I have the bat. The Do Not Peek bat is alive and well, baby. This is the bat that started it all, so I have it. I got no one to hit, though. All right. Next topic, very, very topical as well, happened this week. You guys heard of StarCraft 2? Thought it was dead, right? Dead game, right? Dead game meme. Not dead at all. Big news, big announcement from ESL. They have worked out a deal with Blizzard for both StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3 to basically run ESL Pro Leagues, right? We know Pro League from our world of Counter-Strike. These Pro Leagues are big events all around the world, stops, if you will. Where they'll do StarCraft 2, and then DreamHack's doing a few StarCrafts and kind of heavy on the Warcraft 3 side, and then ESL's doing kind of heavy on StarCraft 2 and a little bit of Warcraft 3. But the idea is like Blizzard, the coolest thing about it is Blizzard is kind of relinquishing, right? They've made a 3-year deal with ESL to kind of run these things for them. And probably it makes sense because they're probably very, very focused as a company on Overwatch League and CWL as esports. So it kind of makes sense to give a trusted partner kind of their other games and say, you know, help us, right? And I'm sure Blizzard will still be actively involved in making sure stuff looks good and runs good and all that. But really, really cool stuff. Now, what it means also, though, StarCraft 2 currently has the WCS, or did have the WCS. This will replace that, right? As kind of the league, if you will, the world that top StarCraft 2 players play in, right? Now, I'm not a huge StarCraft fan in general, right? I'm not a big Brood War guy. You know, a bunch of people were into Brood War and RTSs, and I was into Counter-Strike back in the day, right? You know, RTS is a whole tough game to play for me, right? I'm always like, it's too thinky for me, you know? So I did fall madly in love with StarCraft 2, obviously, as one of the owners of Evil Geniuses. We, as a company and team, wrapped our arms right around that game when it came out, right? Very legendary stuff, right? Idra, Huck. We actually had a team house here in Arizona, did a lot of content here years ago with those guys. So it's really cool to see, and although I don't watch it, I absolutely respect the casting ability of those that talk about it, and absolutely the players. The game is incredible, right? I do watch it occasionally, but I tend to watch a lot of esports for the production value and not so much the game value, but it's really exciting that StarCraft 2 is getting a lift. They made a really nice video. We're going to play that for you, and then we'll talk a little bit more afterwards. Let's go ahead and do that, I think.
We are in a day and age where if you read the forums, if you click around on Twitter, you see people talking about Koreans winning everything, about how foreigners don't stand a chance, how if you're not in Korea, you are not relevant. And Thorzane, today, you stuck a pretty big middle finger in their faces, actually.
It was a beautiful flanking maneuver. That's exactly what it was. It was fantastic positioning and great game sense to realize that, well, this has got to be supported by the pylon somewhere.
All these links are going down so fast versus 3 Marines. And guess what? Carson holds.
Absolutely incredible. I could have sworn that MC was dead in this game. I'm sure that all the people at home thought so as well.
Absolutely fantastic. What a terrific story.
Decimation of this push. Jadon reading Deer like a book. The star senses with Jadon when everything's on the line. Deer now floated down.
He set up the booby trap and it worked. Jadon is your winner.
There's absolutely no guarantee of money, of fame, yet you put in more hours than any other profession on earth. Even though some of these guys would never make it, they deserve to have the world know. This was a beautiful thing that you devoted your life to for some amount of years.
And he's going to go again. The Nexus is going to fall, and this is a massive move for Zest, but he's not content. Just a Nexus kill. He wants to win. GD! Your world champion is KT Rolster Zest. Zest is best. All has defeated Snoot. He's crushed through the forces.
Yon is our WCS World Champion! There's too much, there's too many, there's no stopping Rogue now!
Oh, there you have it. What a video. I'm not going to lie. That video makes me really sad and really happy at the same time. You know, rest in peace, Jeff and John. We lost some badasses, right? Sorry. Didn't even think it was going to hit me like that. But great video. Super hype. But those of us that know those guys, oof. Sorry, Jason. This hit me harder than I thought it would. Obviously, Jeff, I can't talk about it because it'll get even worse. But okay, so back to the news. What I would suggest is Team Liquid wrote a really nice article, and they have an interview with Sean Clark, Apollo, if you know the StarCraft scene. And he answers some questions. He talks about region lock. He talks about, you know, how ESL is doing stuff with Blizzard, how they're changing things, what the future might look like, you know, and kind of lays it out. You know, this is kind of Sean's baby. Much love to you, Sean and Apollo. Yeah, this, oh, sorry, chat. And I have written down here to make some like Warcraft 3 jokes, like ready to serve, you know, zog. Really cool stuff. Again, I'm not a hardcore StarCraft 2 fan, but I know that, you know, they are legions of fans all around the world still. So it's great for them that, you know, they've got a growth plan and a way to keep that badass game alive. And Warcraft 3 is great to see coming back, right? I mean, obviously, that was a historic esport for quite a time, the Warcraft series. You know, Grubby, holy crap, all those guys, right? So it's kind of cool to see these games kind of, you know, getting ESL to kind of take them and kind of raise them back up, man. So it's awesome stuff. I think I'll probably tune into some StarCraft again. And again, just hearing like, you know, Dan and Nick, you know, it's just so legendary. Casters, talent, it's just players, just awesome stuff, right? Trying to cheer myself back up, folks. So really good stuff. Obviously more coming, but definitely research. Team Liquid is obviously all over it. Definitely want to get more news from them. Let's get rid of that. Let's move on and get pissed, right? This will help me. Let's get mad about some shit again, right? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Global Esports Federation. Anyone ask for that? Anyone call for an esports federation that's global? That isn't the International Esports Federation that's over 10 years old, that we also like, what the fuck do you do? Right? So, like, these guys announced, this Global Esports Federation announced this during the holiday, so it wasn't quite last week. Here, you know, nice picture of them all. I don't recognize any of them. And no one I know in esports recognizes any of them. Right? It's like, what in the goddamn hell is going on here, right? And I'll tell you what's going on, right? These federations, and this one in particular is even wackier because it's backed by Tencent, right? Tencent's in the federation. It's like one of the guys from Tencent is like a vice chairman of it. They are the major title sponsor of it. Yeah, so let's have a game developer who owns pieces of all sorts of games as well as a bunch of other stuff be part of a federation. Are they gonna isolate other game developers out of the game? Are they gonna only push Tencent games? You know, and the idea, if you go look at their talking points so far, and even if you go look at the IESF website, these federations are all being organized because they kind of exist in different ways in sports, right? Gymnastics has federations, ice skating has federations. All these kind of Olympic-style sports have federations that kind of help run their sport, right? Because they're not league systems like the NFL or the NBA or Premier League, right? So they're often run by federations, right? And to have your sport in the Olympics, you need to have an overarching governing body of your sport, right? And that helps the IOC, people that run the Olympics, because you basically come Jason in my ear, take bribes. The federation runs the sport, right? So if you're at the Olympics and you're watching track and field or you're watching gymnastics or any of those kind of sports, the IOC, the Olympic people are not running the sport. They're not admitting it. They're not judging it. It is the federation of that sport that rolls in and basically runs an event at the Olympics for their sport, right? So all these people that are opening these federations, literally go look at their websites. They talk about Olympics. They talk about they're building this with member nations to get into the Olympics with esports. The fuck, right? First off, two most corrupt sports entities on the planet are the IOC and FIFA, right? So, and again, I speak from experience with both. I spent 7 Olympics with Coca-Cola and 3 World Cups with Coca-Cola, right? Traveling the world, doing event logistics for them. They are corrupt. I mean, it's public. They take bribes. A bunch of them have been busted, right? So they're not so these guys are forming federations so they can plant their flag as, we are the Esports Federation. You talk to us, IOC. So you got one bunch of maybe corrupt people absolutely trying to do business with corrupt people, right? Under the guise of being a global unifying esports federation. First off, IOC has said several times that it'll be very iffy if our games ever make the Olympics. And if they do, there'll be a very specific set of game types, right? No violent games. So probably sports games. I know they are doing some stuff, actually. We've had some exhibition stuff kind of before the Olympics with StarCraft 2. There's been some announcements about Street Fighter and StarCraft 2 at the next Olympics as part of the kind of the pregame stuff. That's awesome, right? Nothing wrong with any of that. But these federations are trying to come out of nowhere, didn't help build any of the shit we're all doing, right? And like, oh, this is ours. Yeah, we organized. Yeah, you talk to us. Yep, talk to us. Oh, you want to be a member nation? Okay, we'll sign you up. And it's just a bunch of fucking bullshit, if you ask me, right? And again, IESF, the International Esports Federation, has been around, I think, 2007, 2008 they first launched, but a very similar thing. And if you go look at their website, it's all about, like, the Olympics are listed all over the place, right? And we're going to deal with doping and regulations and all these kind of things, right? Well, first off, we have publishers who own these games, right? So gymnastics, the federation runs. Riot runs League of Legends, right? So it's just it's cash. I don't want to call it a cash grab because I don't know what kind of money is involved in this. It's a land grab, right? It's a control grab. It's a power grab. And it's just kind of laughable when you look at these lists and other people from all around the world in esports look at these lists and go, I don't know any of these people, right? But they're trying to represent us on a global, level. And we all know our esports are very, very different. Like we talked about before, they don't relate. They won't all live under one federation. Now, thankfully for me, again, not being an IOC fan, don't work the Olympics anymore, my favorite game will never have to worry about being sucked in by the IOC and being fucked up, right? Because it's a very violent video game with terrorists and counter-terrorists. So at least my favorite game never has to deal with the Olympic bullshit that might be coming the way. Same thing with college stuff, right? The NC2A, if they ever decide, they would be the third most corrupt sports organization. If the NC2A ever decides to really wrap their arms around college esports, they also probably won't give a shit about Counter-Strike. So that's cool. So it's just funny to watch, right? They'll get no traction. They'll get no power. IOC don't give a fuck about them, but they're building these things. So let them have some fun, I guess. So again, going to do a little bit more teasing here. Top 5 from Duncan. We made a great video with Duncan. Top 5 Counter-Strike players of 2019 is going to come your way at the end of the show. And then we're also going to take some questions in chat. So again, keep in mind, if you want to ask me a question, whether it's about something we talked about today or a general esports gaming question that I can try to answer, use DNPeek in our chat. It'll highlight. Our guys will grab it. They're building a document for me. I'll look at it in a few minutes, and we'll answer some of your questions. I've already talked for an hour and 10 minutes. That's crazy.
Hey, Scott.
Yep.
Can we look at the GEF promo video?
Oh, yes, Jason. Good call. I totally forgot. You got to see this video. Yep. Thank you, Jason, for reminding me because I would have been pissed. I'm not even going to talk.
Oh, no.
Okay, I'll talk. Look at this thing. Okay, it's beautiful. Esports is beautiful. It's colorful. It's dynamic. Big cities. Virtual reality. What? Yeah, okay.
It's global.
Let's take all the clip art and all the bullshit we can. Yep, sure. Tennis, sure. Virtual tennis, real tennis.
Racing.
Virtual racing, real racing. Yeah, sure.
Yoga.
The world is our garden. The fuck does that mean? You know someone got paid a lot of money to make this video though, so props to you. Yeah, yoga. Yoga was actually on my list to probably be a breakout esport of 2020 or maybe 2021. But only virtual reality yoga, obviously. The world is our classroom. The fuck does that have to do with esports?
Learning.
Like, look at how much virtual reality is in this promo video for the Global Esports Federation. Does this not just tell you that they don't know what the fuck they're doing? They know nothing about esports? Oh, look, actual esports players. Oh, wait, nope, Taekwondo. Or Judo, or something like that. Hey, there's an esports player, maybe. Yay, we're excited. It's just like, what the fuck? Like, I love that I have a show now, because this would be what I do in the beginning of Scoots After Dark on my stream, right? Or what Marcus and Rod and I used to do every week on Live on 3 was like, get a load of this bullshit. What is this, right? So, and thank you, Jason, for reminding me, because I skipped over it in the run of show. Like, that video is like, that just sums it up. You all have no idea. You have no idea what you're doing. Anyway, all right. And we're done with that topic. Now let's wrap this bad boy up, right? Our first show is already at about an hour and a half by the time we get all done and finished with this bad boy. So a couple other things, little housekeeping notes, as I like to call them. Tonight, Half-Life TV confirmed. I won't say it's a weekly show because they kind of do it around Chad Sponge's kind of schedule as he's traveling, but it's a great podcast that these guys are doing, well, video podcast. A couple guys from Half-Life TV. Chad is a regular, and then tonight they've got Chet, who's I'm a Pet, the coach of EG, on for the show. They always kind of bring a guest player or someone, a coach, someone in the scene, and it is your in-depth kind of Counter-Strike news. They will rant, they will bitch and gossip as well and talk about some of the same points. I know tonight on their topics, they are going to interview Chet, but they're going through right now their Half-Life TV's top 20 players of the year as well. So they're going to be discussing that. You know, check out Half-Life TV's website, and you can kind of see where they are with their list. And then they're going to talk about the rebranding issues as well. So I'm going to tune in to hear what Chad and the gang have to say about North, or North, if you will, because the Lions got a lisp now, right? So that'll be kind of cool. And then one thing I want you to keep in mind, maybe write down, maybe go bookmark this website, and I'm going to talk about it more next week. This last couple months, we saw the release of juked.gg, right? Go there right now. Don't leave my channel. Go there right now as well. Juked.gg, right? It is your, I'm going to say TV guide, but you bastards are way too old to even, or young to even know what the goddamn TV guide is. You used to get a TV guide every week, right? And it had everything that was on TV, right? So, and this is Fish Sticks and Chanman, or Ben and Chris, it's company. They've started, and Ben used to work at Twitch. And Ben started this, and Chadman's been all over the place, app developer, podcast runner, all sorts of stuff. So they've come together to basically bring Ben's old vision back to life. Before Ben joined Twitch, he had this idea before, like, what if I build a consolidated place so you can go and see what the hell's going on in esports? Because we all have our own sites, right? Like, I go to Half-Life TV. Tells me everything I need to know about Counter-Strike matches, when they're playing, who's playing, where the streams are, all that kind of stuff, right? When it comes to like the streams and the tournaments, right? But not every community has a Half-Life TV, right? They should, but they don't, right? So Ben, when he left Twitch, decided to redo this idea years later, right? Everything's grown and got bigger. So now it's basically your resource to find out what's on when. You can set reminders, you can get notifications, all that kind of shit. Really, really cool site. Still being built. They're still flushing stuff out, but it's awesome. Ben's going to make me a little video and kind of walk through the site for you all and kind of explain himself what it is. I just did it, but next week we'll roll that and we'll see Ben a little bit. But super cool stuff. Make it a bookmark, especially if you're into multiple esports, right? And you watch a lot of them on a regular basis, and they're constantly adding esports and events and different stuff. They're starting to add shows eventually. So, you know, our show is going to be listed. I think it's listed right now, so that's awesome. It's listed kind of in the match format as if it was a tournament match, but really, really cool site. Definitely well worth checking out and bookmarking. You know, shout outs to Ben, to Ben and Chris. You know, I'm glad you guys are getting it up and running. So that's awesome, right? And I think that's about all I've got for this week. I'm trying to think. Yeah, so I got no more topics that kind of come into my brain. I'm going to go to the question thing, and then, of course, you're going to see Thorin's top 5 in a matter of minutes. So let me pull my question thing up. And, oh, God, it didn't close on me, did it? No. Stand by, folks. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Where are we at?
Way to be prepared, Scott. Did you know we're going to do
Yeah.
a show today?
I
Are
hate
you
when
ready?
yeah, he's such an asshole, this guy. This is Jason, right? We made an agreement, Jason, that I wasn't going to fire you and yell at you today, and you weren't going to yell or fire me today. And
You
look
can
at
still
you
keep
know
your
you.
job, but
God,
there
man.
may be a pay cut.
Son of a bitch. All right, let me get this open. Google Doc. Wait, it's not. Stand by. I got to close chat. Google Doc. Okay. Looks like I have 2. I'm seeing 2. Okay. So let's start with that. Okay. So, excuse me. I'm going to do a quick little cough here. I'm going to actually mute myself just to make it easier for you all. Okay. First question. Got a couple. Comes from Crocia. What brands in esports could use a rebrand? Oh, God, bro. Oh, you know what I also didn't mention? Why, this made me think of this. Complexity rebranded last year too, right? But that rebrand was fine because it made perfect business sense, right? That was a rebrand, right? That was a drastic rebrand. Changed colors, changed logo, changed everything. But it made perfect sense because they're owned by the Dallas Cowboy people, right? So they're embracing their parent company, and the Dallas Cowboys is the largest sports brand on the goddamn planet. They are. They sell the most merch. You know, they have the most reach for fans. Now, yeah, their team's they're done for the season, right? But legendary team overall when it comes to sports, right? So it makes perfect sense for Jason Lake and the gang to go, you know what? We probably do need to go from black and red to the white and blue, figure out a star logo, and really kind of synergize, right? They have facilities that are at the star where all the Cowboys facilities are. So that one makes perfect sense. So if someone would ask me what rebrand was the best that I've seen so far, that one. Right now, if you're an old school Complexity fan, sure, you lose the nostalgia of the old logo and the black and red. But Jason and I laughed about it when we saw it. We're like, thank you. One less team with black and red colors so we can have them again. Thank you. Because our favorite colors are blue and green, but it just didn't work out for a logo and a company. So I'm trying to think why I'm filling time, Crocia. Who could use one? Fuck. NRG could use one. I'm going to leave it at that. NRG could rebrand again. That's probably one I probably can't answer on the fly, bro, without some serious thought. Yeah. Sorry about that. And then last question, Nico Van G asks, Scoots, do you think it was time for CSGO to move to a more structured league type rather than being completely open, or did you like the old way? Good question, really good question. I like the idea, and a lot of us that are kind of purists in some regards like the open ecosystem of an esport because it really makes everyone work harder, right? Tournament organizers have to keep upping their game, right? Because they have competition, right? Team owners have to worry about being relegated out of their leagues, have to worry about these kind of things, right? You're not locked in forever. I kind of like the open Wild West of it, like, you know, survival of the fittest. And it's certainly on the production side, we have absolutely seen our production levels go up in Counter-Strike, especially when we've got multiple TOs, because they all kind of look at whatever guys did and try to top it, right? E-League set the bar in a way. Then ESL went, okay, we can do that. PGL was like, hey, look at us. We got this cool shit. ESL said, okay, we'll hire those guys away. The Vlads now work for ESL. And so I like that, right? That fosters innovation, and a competition is good for any kind of scene, right? So I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where Valve says, you know what, we love this Overwatch League idea. We're locking it all down, franchise system for everybody, and then, you know, we're done. So, but I think we're going to end up with some middle ground in some regards, right? Again, we've got ESL that's kind of changing their pro league a little bit, and we've got B-Site that we don't quite know exactly what it's going to be, but Valve has come out and said, you can't make your leagues exclusive. You can't legally say in your documentation and all this stuff, if you play in our thing, you can't play in that thing. So what we're going to see, again, back to that idea of competition, we're going to see them overlap on dates, right? Because Valve doesn't necessarily control the calendar in that sense. So that's how they'll get their exclusive for some of these leagues, right? We still have our open system. We have all these open tournaments that are invite or qualification, right? That's not going anywhere. But I think you're seeing the league products get more structured to try to get more ROI, to get more marketing value for the league part of these things, these long runs, to monetize them and make them worthwhile, right? And I think we're going to see some experiments the next couple of years on which works well. So I love the idea that ECS and EPL are both here, right? Because that's competition, right? If you think of our leagues, right? So B-Site, I love that idea too. That'll make ESL worry about Pro League more, right? And these guys have to worry about what Pro League is doing. So I think we as fans benefit with this competition. Players absolutely benefit with this competition. And it makes it maybe more of a struggle for TOs. And team owners have to kind of, in some regards, pick a side when it comes to these league formats, right? And so we'll see how that all plays out. So I think we're going to end up with a little bit more of a hybrid than what we had before. A little bit more lockdown stuff. But we still have our very open majors and our very open regular tournament circuit that all sorts of people are involved in, not just ESL. Star ladders, epicenters, right? All those kind of things. I wish E-League was still here doing Counter-Strike because they were one of the ones that set a lot of the good bars. Players got taken care of and all those kind of things. So I think that answers the question. But again, I know we have to have change, right? I know that the ROI is not really there for the spend on this kind of stuff. Player salaries are high. I would say they're great, not necessarily overpaid, but these guys make a good living traveling the world, right? Team Liquid traveled over 240 days last year. 240 days on the road. And I think that's actually not even accurate anymore, right? That's a lot of time to be away from family, girlfriends, all those kind of things, right? So the pay compensates that, right, in some regards. Not only are you the best in the world, so you should get paid for it, but also, it's not like you have a 9-to-5 job at home, right? So it's just, again, as I said earlier in the show, we're going to break some eggs the next couple of years, kind of as these TOs and teams kind of figure out the next evolution of our game. Our game is 20 years old. It ain't going anywhere, right, which is awesome. Player count going up, right? Free to play helped that, right? Asia blowing up for Counter-Strike finally, right? Kind of maybe taking a little bit off of the crossfires and the sudden strikes and these other kind of clones in those regions, right? That is all great news if you're a Counter-Strike fan, right? But again, these guys, everyone's going to stub their toe a little bit, right? As we kind of figure out what the next evolution of the business of Counter-Strike is, right? Looking forward to it for sure. And again, being a player association guy, the Counter-Strike PA is in deep with all of this, right? Which is great. So that means the player's voice is at least being heard by all these entities, right? Are they going to get everything they want as players when they ask for this, that, or the other? Absolutely not. Are all the TOs going to get everything they want from the players? Absolutely not. Are the team owners going to get everything they want from everybody else? Absolutely not. But anyone who negotiates deals and does these kind of things for a living will tell you that the best deal is when everyone walks away a little grumpy, right? Because it's all about compromise, right? We'll give you this, you give us that, right? If everyone walks away going, best deal ever, somebody's getting fucked and they don't know it, right? So lots of compromise coming our way, right? And again, I am under a lot of NDAs, as I said earlier in the show, so I really can't talk about details till they're more announced. But this show will talk a shitload about Counter-Strike and this kind of stuff, especially every week as stuff gets announced, right? Because then I'm free to talk about it, right? And that's it. That's it. We're done with our first show. That's it. I made it through. I didn't die. Whew! But we're not quite, I'm done. We're not quite done. We're going to leave you with a tasty morsel. Thorin, Duncan Shields, you know him as, his top 5 Counter-Strike players of 2019 coming your way now.
I'm Thorin, also known as the Esports Historian, and here are my top 5 players of 2019, exclusively for Do Not Peak Entertainment. Now, to decide my 5 players, I didn't just use stats, I didn't just use memories. I went back over some of the matches, watched POVs. Primarily, I go from the eye test, what my intuition, what years of experience watching the game has told me. I look at stats, but then I try to look at the context. Like how many maps did they play at a tournament? Which teams did the player perform best against? How many kills per round do they have? How many deaths per round? Then relative to the role that they play, the balance of stars and roles and fragging and success within their team. So to me, championships, essentially, how far you get towards a championship will probably dictate how many maps you played and what chance you had to performing as top teams. But championships are always secondary to performance. So at number 5, I have Twists from Team Liquid. He dropped MVP level numbers for all of Team Liquid's summer run. Now, it's true, he did drop off quite heavily in the last third of the year. He was one of the notable players who his fragging numbers went way down. He had way less maps and way less big games, specifically even against Astralis, obviously the big nemesis of Team Liquid. And hence, it's kind of tough to even put him higher. But if people don't remember, the middle part of the year when Team Liquid was winning all those tournaments, when they won 22 series in a row, this guy was the sidekick to Elige and right there with him in MVP level numbers. Like it's Elige who won most of the MVPs, but he really could have won the MVP at something like 6 or 7 out of 8 tournaments in a row. So exceptional performance in the meaty part of the year. Now, he played kind of a different role to perhaps past years that you might have seen him where he was more of an entry. He was more of a lurk role this year, more on the extremities of the maps. Hence, he had very low deaths for a player of his like fragging ability and of his performance level, which is quite impressive, even though it's not the same raw output of kills, because often he was away from the action. He has a top 3 aim in Counter-Strike. There are very, very few players who can fuck with this guy's aim. Incredibly explosive as a result. And this is the key thing. He might not be the most consistent player he was in the summer, but he can be more up and down map to map, and depending on which role he plays on maps like Overpass, he's a little bit more in the entry group. But as a result, when he hits his skill peak, which is incredibly high, he's a game changer. People who are left off this list, Magisk, Electronic, they're more consistency, they're more grind you down round after round, kill after kill. This guy is one where he might have a quiet game, but the next game he might win the entire game for his team. Not single-handedly, but he'll be the primary carry of doing so, and against anyone, seemingly. So a nice little slot into the top 5 for Twists. At number 4, we have another Team Liquid player, the team that won the most tournaments this year, understandably, have 2 massive players who, in terms of frags and overall performance, were on my list, and that is Elige, the best North American player, one of the best players of the year. Best player of Team Liquid during their run of 6 titles in the summer, the Intel Grand Slam, 22 series in a row. He mainly played as a follow-up entry player. He's a god-tier player on CT sides at holding big sites. Notably, we think obviously of maps like Mirage, more notably than that, even Inferno. You cannot go to the A site pretty much, so teams have to default to going B all the time. He has incredible aim. Everyone knows and sees the spray. His spray control is some of the best we've ever seen. But his first bullet that he then pulls into spray is outrageous as well. Like, this guy could be a Scream and Burst player if he wanted to. It's just it's less effective because of how good his spray is. And hence, yes, when weapons like the SG, the Krieg, the AUG were kind of OP, he was one of the best players with them. But you know what? You give him an AK on the T side, you give him an M4A4, he's absolutely unbelievable and will lock down any site, open any site, given the resources that he needs to play his role. One of the most interesting things about Elige is now that he's come into his comfort, into his own, his prime, the zone as a player, and he's mastered all elements of his game, he controls the game. He makes the game play out at his pace, which is never a very, very quick pace. Actually, it's slow. It's a lot of decision-making. It's making reads. It's using information from his teammates. But then when he gets an opportunity and he gets into that pocket, he is absolutely deadly. One of the best in the game if you set him up. I would describe him as Cold Zero with even better aim and maybe a little bit less on the mentality side of things. In at number 3, it is Device, the most consistent CSGO player to ever play the game. He was the winner of both of the majors this year, MVP of the second one, the Starlight Berlin Major. You could argue he actually had his best individual year as a raw fragger, as a dominant carry within Astralis. The problem is, he's not going to be remembered as having his best year because the lack of team success relative to last year cost him the chance to get more MVPs. But to be fair, hence why I say I think he actually maybe had an even better individual year. Last year, when he won a lot of the MVPs, sometimes it was by a much smaller margin over the teammates in his team, and he was just winning because he was overall the best player and overall the slightly more valuable player. This time, he could have won more MVPs as like the dominant carry, thinking back more to the 2016 Astralis of Carrigan. Then you've also got to add in another reason why he can't be the player of the year despite an absurdly good individual year is yet again, just like last year it was Nico and it was simple, he has a couple of unbelievable individual godlike prodigy players who are just ahead of him. In terms of the mortals, Device is the best we've ever seen in CSGO. And if you want to go to the godlike players, they unfortunately transcend a little bit beyond him. He hard carried Astralis during that Blastralis period where they could not make finals or win tournaments. And you can quite frankly have a debate, if you really want to have one, around all the metrics in the game between him and the person who's in at number 2. He's the best AWPer in Counter-Strike, specifically, not just the consistency of shots, but the intelligence of how he uses the AWP. He very rarely ever feeds or throws the game for you. His ability to save is unparalleled and certainly not greedy in a way that certain players have become notorious for. He is a strong clutch player and performer, despite that being one of his weaknesses in the past. Shows how he's developed as a player. I think if you just want to pick out one round that shows incredible things that Device can do and turn an entire match around, just look at the opening round against NRG in the major semi-final where he wins that 1v3 with 3 bullets left against 3 people and 3 health. If he doesn't win that round, that entire map could be different. We could have seen 3 maps. Maybe we even see a different team in the final other than Astralis. And finally to mention, Device is one of the greatest of all time, and he is a candidate for the greatest of all time in CSGO. And this year adds to that because he has yet another year, it's now 5 in a row, where he has been a top 5 player in CSGO. No other player in the history of CSGO has ever accomplished a feat like that. At number 2, the suspense need be kept up no longer. It is simple. Last year's number 1 is this year's number 2. Now, he had another superlative year. If it wasn't for last year, you'd say this was the best year of his career. He would be the player of the year in any other year. But unfortunately, someone else had a historic, truly epic performance, even in the vein of simple, and outdid him this year. This year, there were kind of 2 simples. There was the first half of the year, he was the super carry, he was the simpler 2018. He was a little bit hamstrung and maybe could have won this award if Na'Vi had attended more tournaments, if Na'Vi had qualified through, the certain competitions. But they took a little more of a break. The team was obviously winding down with Zeus, and so that limited his chances when he was in prime form to go off as much. But you saw him at IEM Katowice, he almost carried them to the final. You saw them at Star Series Season 7, he was the reason why they won that tournament, despite the fact sometimes they were playing teams that actually looked better than them. Problem is, in the second half of the year, while his rival was shining, he changed role, he even changed mouse at one point in time, he even changed weapon, he gave up the AWP weapon that he is the most deadly with in the game. But you look at his numbers, even with some of the semi-slump or not as overall dominant tournaments towards the end of the year, he still averaged 0.85 KPR on LAN for the year. He still averaged only 0.6 deaths per round. This is a guy with unparalleled fragging ability. The person who's number 1 might be a better player right now and be performing better, but he's not a better fragger than Simple, because nobody to ever play any version of Counter-Strike is a better fragger than Simple. He had more help in the second half of the year, which also, I think, is part of the reason his numbers went down. He changed his role, etc., and makes him not the super carry that he was in 2018 the entire time. For me, he is the greatest of all time in Counter-Strike. He just wasn't the greatest in 2019. That brings us to number 1, and if you haven't guessed yet, who? Ziwu. This is the French prodigy. What an unreal first year of your career. Now, sure, it's not quite the same as a first year, because he kind of had a warm-up in Tier 3 or whatever last year, but this is his first proper year against Tier 1 online, consistently going to the biggest competitions, all eyes on him, and boy did this guy deliver. He's one of the best AWPers. You could argue he is the best AWPer. He would be one of the best rifle players, a top 5 rifle player in the world, even if he didn't have an AWP. His pistols are very, very strong, and he is one of the best clutch players we have in the first proper professional year of his career. That is absurd. Maybe you get a player who's just very good at clutches, but not a monster elsewhere. I'm thinking of a player like JKS. This guy has it all with the fragging and with the complete game. I don't think I've ever seen a player as complete in his first professional year as this player. If I'm ignoring people at the beginning of the original Counter-Strike who were already 23 when they started the game, this guy obviously much, much younger. He has very strong game sense, which is so unique for a player of his age, both in terms of inexperience and professionally in terms of like his literal age. But this is a guy who doesn't get phased in matches. And as a result, one of the most crazy stats is the deaths per round. Yes, he's not playing as aggressive sometimes as Simple was in the first half of the year, but the fact that he is dying so little while outputting that many kills, while winning that many clutches, while using the AWP, that makes him the most valuable player in all of Counter-Strike. Now, the one knock on him, and this is certainly a knock you can give, is he didn't have placings at the majors. He made top 8 at one major, he didn't make it at the other one. That's not his fault, because his consistency through the year, even at those majors, wasn't quite as good often, but his consistency through the whole year was unbelievable. And crucially, the necessity to carry. He had to carry hard this year. I'd argue even harder this year than Simple did last year, although I do think Simple's last year was better than ZywOo's overall because he had those big performances at the majors. So no one else in the game has to carry as hard as ZywOo. Let me say that another way. He is the biggest carry player in all of CSGO right now. And as a result, he is the best player of the year. He won one of the last tournaments of the year. What a phenomenal player, ZywOo. And let's see him and Simple battle for it next year. Now, a couple of honourable mentions I thought I would just point out here because it contrasts my criteria as well. Two players that absolutely you could make an argument that they should be number 5 or even number 4 if you want to go by different metrics, and that is Electronic from Na'Vi, and the one that everyone forgets is Magisk from Astralis. What these two players are able to do is consistently put out a lot of frags, not that many deaths, specifically Magisk is unbelievable for this. His consistency is outrageous event to event to event, and Electronic, the fact he wins clutches and controls the game, also Soki. These are two of the best sidekick second star players you could have in the game, but the problem is they're more about grinding consistency, whereas for me, a player like Twists, his explosive up and down streaky nature, because it can be at such a high level like it was in the summer, will actually win you more games, even though the other guy sets up his main star to win more tournaments sometimes, if that makes sense. That was my top 5 players of 2019 for Do Not Peak. Do you agree? Would you have changed the order around? Maybe you'd have someone else entirely on your list. If so, let us know in the comments and stay tuned to the channel for more content from Do Not Peak Entertainment.